So the PowerPoint on dementia. Remember, this is our key question. How can psychologists help us understand dementia? Remember, there won't be that kind of statement in the exam. You get 1 mark for saying what it is. They'll just ask you what your key question from cognitive is. It's also going to be used for our developmental psychology portion. If they ask you about how development affects cognitive or memory, this is what we will use as an example. So remember, dementia affects about 850,000 people in the UK, and that number is just growing and growing and growing. That's why it is our key issue. Why it's an important thing that psychology needs to kind of weigh in on and be able to explain. People with dementia get treated on the NHS, and we have specialist hubs that can help them. And it is essentially a problem with processing information, including memory. It causes the big decline. Remember, it's a kind of gradual decline. It's progressive over time. The older you get or the longer you have it, the kind of worse it gets. There are various stages from early to late stage. So in early stage dementia, these are the sort of characteristics we see. In middle stage, we see the following. Again, you can pause this, get these notes down yourself. And in late stage, it kind of gets worse and worse and worse. Remember, there's lots of different types of dementia. The most famous one is Alzheimer's, but you can mention anyone that you want really in the description. These are the 4 A's of Alzheimer's. So agnosia, the inability to recognize objects when presented visually. Anomia, the inability to find the right word. Aphasia, difficulty understanding kind of instructions or having a conversation. And apraxia, difficulty with actions, behaviors. So what you have to be able to do is look at each of the 4 theories of memory and talk about how they explain or they help with dementia. So what we see with semantic versus episodic is that only episodic memory is drastically affected by it. Semantic memory remains fairly stable, whereas episodic kind of starts fading in the present, so your most recent memories, and then spreads back throughout the past. So this is why a lot of people with Alzheimer's or dementia might be seen to be living in the past, because their dementia has kind of progressed and their episodic memory has faded all the way back to a certain period of their life. So what we can do to kind of help people with dementia following this is set up things like certain care homes where we go with kind of their delusions almost. We can help them by kind of going along with their beliefs, because to kind of correct them all the time would be distressing to them. The multi-store model shows that short-term memory is drastically affected. Remember, in the Louis Theroux documentary we watched, that lady had trouble holding 4 words in her memory for more than a second or two. A lot of the forgetting, inverted commas, that we see in dementia is because short-term memory hasn't actually been able to encode information and pass it into long-term. So you can speak to these people, and then a few seconds later, they've kind of forgot what you're saying, and they forgot what the conversation was, things like that. They also have difficulty retrieving things from their long-term memory, but again, that's more in line with episodic memory. So to help that, we can help with kind of labels, a lot of kind of techniques to help them kind of keep their memories going, writing things down for them so they don't have to use short-term memory, and being very specific in the questions that we ask. Working model of memory, it is the central executive that is in decline, and it declines fairly rapidly. This is why people with dementia have problems with shifting attention, with monitoring 2 tasks at the same time, things like that. Molander and Bachman show an example of this. Again, you can get this study if you want. It's very much an extension piece of work. And reconstructive memory is the one that's kind of least applicable in this situation, but we can still write about it. The person with dementia might be a bit confused at times and get their memories kind of muddled or confused because they're accessing the wrong schemas. So their understanding of a certain situation is affected by that. Stivers and Hemmer is an example of kind of a study into dementia. And very briefly, I'll tell you a few things about the biology of dementia. Again, this will go very much for the description of it. So we see kind of people with Alzheimer's or dementia, their brains kind of get smaller, they atrophy as well. and there's kind of very much a shrinking of neural capacity. Partially, the kind of big things biologically are plaques and tangles. So what we see is that kind of these plaques build up between the neurons, between the nerve cells, which means that they can't kind of pass information between them. Also, the neurons get tangled up, so they're not passing information very clearly either then. So again, very brief summary of questions on dementia. It would be roughly an 8-mark question, 4 for describing what it is, 4 for giving me ideas or comments about what the theories would say.